Welcome to City Inside Out Council Edition. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. A newly approved plan to build affordable housing in Seattle's SODO neighborhood has drawn praise from housing advocates and small businesses, and harsh criticism from longshoremen and the Port of Seattle. What impact will this measure have on the city and our regional economy? Plus, how will a newly expanded crisis response system affect public safety in Seattle? Council President Sarah Nelson joins me to discuss these issues and the questions you're sending in too. Next on Council Edition.
We are a welcoming city, and we are very concerned about preparing ourselves for whatever could come forward.
All that and more coming up next on City Inside Out Council Edition. Welcome to City Inside Out Council Edition once again here on the Seattle channel. I'm Brian Callanan, and with me I have Council President Sarah Nelson from the citywide Position 9 seat. Thank you very much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me again.
And let me jump into it here. You've been busy. You sponsored some legislation here to build affordable housing in a Makers District in a 2-block stretch just south of T-Mobile Park. This was the source of some very heated debate. The Port of Seattle says this project will negatively impact their ability to do business, but the city needs housing too. So you had a coalition of people supporting you. The council passed this with a 6-3 vote. Why was this project important to you? Why did you want to do this?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge that there were strong emotions on each side. So I do not discount the port's concern or Longshore's concern. But the fact of the matter is, this was about Seattle's affordability crisis, the fact that working people can no longer afford to live in Seattle, the fact that our small manufacturing businesses are leaving town at a rate of about 2 to 3 a month because they can't find affordable workspace, and many of those businesses are disproportionately owned by women and people of color. And so the affordability issue, the crisis, is so urgent that we had to do something, and we had a perfect opportunity with the underlying zoning in this 2-block stretch that would require that any housing that's built there, 50% has to be affordable at a rate that would allow our workers to live there, and also provide for subsidized space for our small industrial businesses. And so it was a win-win for those two very important reasons, but also for our unionized labor force. This creates brand new union jobs to build and operate the structures once they're already completed. And so the benefits far outweighed the costs, and I just felt that the time was right to move forward because of the strength of the coalition behind it.
Got it. I want to touch on another issue with this project, the idea that bringing more people to live in SODO could make the neighborhood safer and more vibrant. There was one take on this from Chris Marr with the Washington State Ballpark Public Facilities District, who supports the project. Here's what he had to say.
Here in Seattle, where we find ourselves facing an affordable housing and public safety challenge, we should be taking advantage of the Stadium District to do the same as places like Denver, San Diego, and Washington, D.C.
So not a lot of people live in SODO, but the public safety and traffic safety problems there are definitely well documented. It's one of the busiest freight routes in the state. I'll tack on here a little bit. We had a viewer write in saying mixing trucks and more commuters is a bad recipe for safety. I want to make sure I understand this piece. How does bringing more housing to this area make it safer, do you think?
It makes it safer because we're talking about 24/7 activation of a 2-block stretch that if you walk it right now is underutilized, and the location of some very, very serious safety concerns. A couple shootings last year, a stabbing, and so on. And so that is why the Pioneer Square neighborhood community neighborhood groups and also the Chinatown International District community groups came out in such strong force.
To support this, yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that caught my attention when this came forward in 2023, which is if you have two adjacent neighborhoods that are calling for it so vociferously, it's because they want their neighborhoods to be safer and more vibrant as well.
I wanted to make sure I kept on going down this path here. Colin had a question. He wrote in this. Will anything be done to quiet and calm streets nearby to make the area more livable? how do you turn this area into a livable neighborhood? I think that's a piece of this. I know people were raising concerns about noise and heavy pollution in this area too.
Yes, and the underlying legislation that was passed in 2023 has a whole list of conditions that must be met in the let's see, the zone. I'm forgetting the name right now. That include noise mediation.
I see, right.
And so those are, and also requiring covenants for people so that the residents cannot then raise legal problems or concerns about all the noise, et cetera.
Right.
People know what neighborhood they're moving into when they move into a neighborhood, and there are there's the Nolo apartments, the Gridiron, the Florentine. There's already a lot of residential use right there just to the north in Pioneer Square. So I trust that people, when they are looking at places to live, are looking at price, location, amenities, etc., and they're making the right decision for themselves.
What do you think about that pedestrian safety piece? I know that was brought up a few times too. Let's not put people too close to a major freight route, one of the biggest ones in the state.
Right, and if you look at the renderings, they are laid out in one of the presentations that's attached to the agenda online. Mm-hmm. The vision is to have the front-facing, the front of these housing
units,
projects face Occidental, and which is a narrow street. But if and we're not talking about closing Occidental solely for pedestrian, we are talking about a quieter street where the lobbies of these housing buildings will be facing.
Facing to the east, essentially. Is that right?
Right. Well, facing the inside of Occidental,
right.
Correct. And just imagine how Occidental looks a few blocks north of the stadiums, and you've got shops on the bottom, and then you've got the uses on top.
Right.
So that is what is envisioned, a quieter street for pedestrians, and then people can enter garages if they so choose from First Avenue, where there are already by the code 3 curb cuts to lead into whatever underground structures per block.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I touched on this pushback from the Port of Seattle. I know this was a very contentious piece of this. They had a statement after the measure after this measure passed, and it was this: the Port of Seattle is disappointed in the Seattle City Council's decision to move forward rushed legislation that will directly harm our city's maritime and industrial operations, threaten thousands of union jobs, and negatively impact our region's economic competitiveness and trade. It pushes us down a slippery slope, of encroachment on industrial lands. Aaron Pritchard, the Chief of Staff for the Port Commission, put it this way during a public comment.
Is the Port not a governing body that deserves the opportunity for collaboration? The Port and the city should be able to negotiate a shared future. Let us sit down and discuss the future of maritime in our city. Council members, if you even have a shadow of doubt, delay this legislation. The Port will come to the table willingly to develop a plan for a future that we can all support.
So the Port says they had a deal with the city 2 years ago that said housing will not be built in this area, and that was after years of work on a maritime agreement there. Then this bill went through the council in about 2 months' time. I guess my bottom line question is here: do you think the process you went through to pass this bill was fair to the Port of Seattle? Because they clearly don't think so.
Well, the deal was the preferred alternative that accompanied the environmental impact statement at the end of about 18 months of negotiation between the city, the port, labor unions, and many other stakeholders. And so when we talk about what, we had a deal, yes. The deal was the preferred alternative. And at the last minute, after conversations that were not public, the housing in one of the urban industrial zones in the Stadium District was removed from the legislation. And so the members of the coalition felt disappointed that the deal that was published, the public preferred alternative, that's the document that says what the city wants there, was changed at the last minute to remove housing where it is precisely, appropriate because it's in a downtown neighborhood, the Stadium District. And so it all depends on which deal you're talking about.
Right.
I'm going on the deal and the facts that were presented in the EIS and the preferred alternative.
I guess what the Port has said about this, and you know this as well as I, they said, well, we had this deal, so we didn't formally oppose that EIS because we thought we had this understanding that housing wasn't going to be built there. Do you have a response address that piece of it?
What I hear from the people that were participating at that point is that the deal was in the preferred alternative. It was agreed that the mayor put it forward. It was a published document, and then there were some conversations that occurred in private with different stakeholders, probably the port and Longshore, and the housing was taken out. Those were not public. I was not part of them. All I can say is that the facts that I was going on in presenting this legislation is that the additional cars, the traffic from up to 990 apartments, would not adversely impact port operations or freight mobility. And when you really think about it, I should pause, because when you think about what's going on right there now, we've got two stadiums that attract 5 million people a year. Yep. There will be a hotel built, which the port agreed to. That's a lot of additional traffic. And the port is actually seeking a cruise operator for Terminal 46 across the street. We're talking a lot of cars right now and additional vehicles on the street. So everything is relative, I recognize, but the cars associated with perhaps 1,000 units up to that, it stretches credulity to think that is going to result in a decline in port activity and a loss of Longshore jobs.
I hear what you're saying, and I know you heard the pushback from the port as well. And we had a viewer write in about this and ask this about the port. What happens if the port follows through on their threats? Andy wrote this in. He's concerned about legal threats from the port over this action by the council and the threat of maybe more port business moving to Tacoma or other places outside of Seattle. You heard the port, a number of commissioners actually came up and said, you're not listening to us and things of this nature. Are you concerned about those things and the relationship between the city and the port right now?
So first of all, we do have the Northwest Seaport Alliance. And so I don't know how decisions are made, which ships go to Tacoma and which come into the Puget Sound. Right. What I do know is that the vast majority of cargo enters and leaves Terminal 5 in West Seattle. So it's not even going down First Avenue. It bypasses completely the area where there will be housing. And there is a lot of extra capacity at Terminal 5, and they have upgraded infrastructure, so that will generate more Longshore jobs and more containers. And so when you really think about where are the agricultural products from Eastern Washington going, they're going to Terminal 5. Yeah. They take a route down Spokane Street, or they're going to the granary, so they go up I-5 to Mercer Avenue. Okay. So. Again, it's about what are the uses right now, what is the current zoning allowing for, lots of cars, lots of office, etc. Yeah. So I believe that if our priority is affordable housing or housing in general, more housing, then we have to take advantage of this opportunity with a project where we will have workforce housing guaranteed as well as subsidized spaces for our small industrial businesses.
Got it. Last piece on this. It's another challenging part of the situation, how dissenting members of the council reacted. I'm thinking of Councilmember Strauss in particular here. He was the chair of the Land Use Committee, as you know, that worked on that prior agreement with the port back in 2023. He was really questioning why back in January this bill ran through your governance committee. He spoke at length, as you know and I know, during the 5-hour meeting where the council approved the SODO housing bill, and he talked about what he called a divisive process.
This has not been a process that has encouraged collaboration or consensus building. This is a process that, in my opinion, has created more division than it has needed to.
This bill turned into a big fight. As council president, how do you keep the city council working together effectively after a battle like this? How can you repair some of the harm that some council members are feeling here?
Well, I understand Councilmember Strauss's opposition because this is a change to the legislation that he was able to get passed in 2023. So, but what I will say is that policy differences are part and parcel of legislating. And it can be expected that there will be strong policy differences in any legislative body. And so...
this one has felt a little more acrimonious to me in watching it.
Well, I am not going to speak to the nature or the validity of the emotions on either side.
All right.
I just recognize that that was the case, and 6-3 vote shows that there is I believe enough desire on the part of enough council members to move on to the next issue that comes before us, and we've got a lot on our plate.
You do, and I want to move on to a much calmer topic, if I could, which would be dealing with the federal government. You're working, good. You're a little slow on that, but we're getting there. You're working with Councilmember Rink on this Federal Administration and Policy Committee. You recently held a meeting, hosted some people from Seattle's immigrant community, the LGBTQ community, to hear their concerns. What did you hear? What do you want Seattleites to know about how this committee is going to work and what you're going to do?
What I want Seattleites to hear is that everybody is safe in Seattle, that we are a welcoming city for everyone, and we have people's back, regardless of the messaging and some of the tactics that are coming down from the other Washington. Our responsibility is to protect our vulnerable communities and our resources that for infrastructure, et cetera. And so this committee is the purpose of this committee is to understand what could be coming forward, and then be prepared for how to respond. I will say, so that's really important, because also the public wants to know that we are engaged and responding, and so that is important for us to be able to communicate that we are a welcoming city, and we are very concerned about preparing ourselves for whatever could come forward. And that is why I organized a weekly call with council member, chiefs of staff, and our federal lobbyists in D.C., because that is up-to-date weekly information about what could be happening right now. And it is very important that we be informed to the last minute and ready to respond as well. So we're trying different methods to make sure that we are prepared to act on the behalf of of the people of Seattle and the resources that make government run. Yeah,
you could probably take that call every 24 hours at this point. There's been a lot that's going on. I wanted to touch on a new public safety development for the city, the expansion of the CARE team, the Community Assisted Response and Engagement Crew. So CARE, as we know, is the third arm of public safety in Seattle, along with police and fire. And there are specialized CARE teams, these crisis responders, going to low-intensity situations like a person down on the sidewalk, for example. Now CARE is expanded citywide this month, moving to the south and southwest precincts. How is this going to help improve public safety in Seattle?
Well, there are people that are suffering all over our city that need supports, that need mental health care, et cetera. And so it's very important that the CARE responders are able to respond everywhere in our city. That is absolutely important. And so I fully support the expansion of the CARE, because across the board, I have never heard any opposition to the idea that officers sometimes are not the right people to be responding to people suffering mental health
Don't always
issues.
Need a badge and a gun, right?
Exactly. And so what I heard talked about by the chief at the last meeting is that what will make the CARE responders even more effective is if they are able to respond single dispatch.
Yeah.
Right, and so
right now cops go with them. That's the case.
And sometimes that is important. I mean, one never knows what
Sure.
one will encounter when we get there. But there are ways of improving the dispatch so that it's not always required that that a gun and a badge go or show up with the people that are trained in these mental health crises and how to respond. And so that requires some negotiation with our police,
the
union.
Police Officers Guild,
and that's ongoing, but I do believe that there is agreement that it would serve our officers better if they can respond to the very clear priority 1, 2, 3 calls and allow the professionals that can be better able to respond to the folks in crisis and are suffering on our streets.
Got it. Thank you. I wanted to switch gears with you, if I could, and talk about a recent meeting to talk about the comprehensive plan, this roadmap for growth in Seattle. It's been a lot of work here. I know you're still waiting on some legislation to actually come from the mayor's office here. This conversation gets in the weeds very quickly, but I'm going to try to break this down. The city has to pass some legislation before June, as I understand it, to deal with some new state requirements that would add density. This is that House Bill 1110, the missing middle bill, as it's called.
Yes.
But then the city's overall comprehensive plan has to be approved later on this year. Can you help us explain what's going on here as best you can? And really, how is this going to impact neighborhoods? What should people expect?
Well, here's what's going on. The One Seattle plan that was sent down by the mayor, it did generate some opposition amongst our constituents.
Yeah.
And so there are now 6 live challenges before the hearing examiner.
Legal challenges, right.
Legal challenges. And so council is prohibited from acting on the actual land use, the actual One Seattle plan until those challenges are resolved.
I see.
So that will be on hold a little bit, but so in the meantime, we still have to comply with HB 1110. So we will be receiving, hopefully very soon, the interim controls, which are the what we can do right now without running afoul of any legal process. What we have to do to comply with that bill, that statewide bill, and so
that adds density to neighborhoods, essentially. Yeah.
Right. We're talking about missing middle housing, which
quadplexes, duplexes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that will be coming forward. We had our first informational briefing this week, and I believe that the next meeting on the 28th, we will actually have the interim controls before us.
Okay. We will keep an eye on that, too. I did want to talk about what's going on with social housing. It's been about a month since 63% of voters said yes to a funding measure for social housing, which involves a tax on businesses with employees making over $1 million. I'm trying to figure out what now, and one concern I've heard from the social housing developers that they need to start hiring staff. They just have a CEO, and that's it right now. The tax goes into effect retroactive to January of this year, is my understanding, but it won't be collected until next year, so there's this gap here. Is the city going to help the developer get started with some money now so they can get geared up, or what is the plan right now with this?
I would not be opposed to that. I'm not abreast of the actual material needs of the organization to start its work, but I do believe that they need to be set up for success. The voters have spoken, and so I want to make sure that that money is well spent by ensuring that that the board and the staff are well set up to start doing their jobs. It is a lot of money, and so we need to make sure that that they can build the projects.
Okay. Thank you for that. It's time to hit the mailbag once again, if I could, with you here. Stephen asks this: every time I drive down Highway 99, and especially the new tunnel, there seems to be new graffiti sprayed on every surface imaginable. Seattle is a beautiful modern city, but this uncontrolled graffiti is making our city look like an urban wasteland. Thank you for that, Stephen. Highway 99 is the state's job, but I know the city is very focused on this with graffiti. Anything you might be able to tell Stephen here?
I agree.
Okay, noted.
Frankly, I agree. And it's something that I hear from so many constituents. And so, yes, we're not going to, the state and the city can't point the finger and say, you do it. It is state property. I don't know if there's anything that the city of Seattle can do to facilitate the state dealing with that graffiti on a regular basis. I think that there is a bill in Olympia that could get at that. I don't have enough information about it, but I would fully support it.
Okay, got it. I'm going to start wrapping up with you here and ask about the statement of legislative intent process that the city went through. I know it sounds like a boring name, but this is basically laying out council members' plans for the year ahead. Can you talk to me about this? Because I'm looking ahead, and I know you are too, at a budget that's going to have some deficit issues here. Spending is an issue. We talk about federal cuts. I don't know how that's going to work in here. Can you talk about your plans for the year ahead and maybe base it off this SLI, Statement of Legislative Intent piece?
Well, the Statement of Legislative Intent, maybe a better name would be a Statement of Legislative Question, because so many of those SLIs, those SLIs, were requests for information from departments about how they're already spending money in existing programs. So, for example, I have a SLI to have, I would like to know why are there underspends every year in the city budget? Target for responsible budgeting is about 5% underspend. That means we have money left over at the end of the year, which is better than having less money. But the point is, we exceed that every year. What does that mean? And we're either allocating too much to the departments, or they're not getting work done. My point is that all of those questions that council members have asked and requested information for, that will set us up, that will put us in a better position to make better informed decisions this coming fall season. And that's exactly what we need to be doing when faced with potential increased deficit.
Okay, I know you're working with a lot there. Just to wrap up, your concerns about the budget ahead? I know that work is starting to happen in the City Council. It's been happening earlier under Councilmember Strauss, I know, but your concerns about what's ahead this year?
Yeah, I'm always concerned about what's ahead this year, because we can't count on the revenue that is projected to roll in. So we'll see what happens. I know that there's going to be a budget, a forecast update, and I think that we should have some contingencies, or actually the mayor should be thinking about contingencies in the budget that is sent down to council this fall.
Okay, I know there's a lot still ahead with that, but Council President Nelson, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for your questions.
All right, appreciate that, and we will see you next time on City Inside Out, Council Edition.